Hello and welcome to the first official episode of Planet Hemorrh. This project will be shown and developed on an episode-by-episode basis. In this episode, we will describe the planet in further detail and also introduce the beginning phyla on the planet Hemorrh. First of all, let's describe the planet itself. Hemorrh is very Earth-like, with its sun, Metis, being very similar to our sun. Hemorrh orbits at a distance which allows it to have liquid water, which is essential for life as we know it. It has vast oceans that vary in depth. It also has a molten core, like Earth, giving it an electromagnetic field. The surface is also broken into several tectonic plates, which will shift over time, influencing how life will develop. The most major difference between Earth and Hemorrh is that Hemorrh is larger than Earth, and has significantly higher gravity. The higher gravity has caused a dense atmosphere to settle around the planet. This dense atmosphere causes dense cloud cover, which hand in hand with the sheer density gives the skies of Hemorrh a pink tint, which it turning into a deep blood red during sunset, which is where it gets its name. Its name is a modification of the word hemorrhage, which means to bleed. The moon of Hemorrh is very similar to that of Earth, and has gained the name Smilo. All of these differences will influence the evolution of life greatly. Speaking of which, we best be moving on to the early phyla. This early life would have developed in the oceans of Hemorrh, in and around hydrothermal vents. It would have remained simple for quite a while, although they would eventually develop multicellular forms. Aquatic multicellular organisms are mostly split into plankton and nekton. Plankton are organisms which cannot move independently and rely on the water current for motion. Nekton are organisms which are adapted for moving independently of the water current. Some organisms do neither and are completely immobile, attached to the seafloor. On Hemorrh, we will see three phyla, each of which are examples of all three methods of motion, or lack thereof. First up are the acanthiforms, a planktonic phylum which drift around near the surface of the water column, filtering out phytoplankton using an array of setae on the ventral side of their body. They also have several setae on their sides which they can beat weakly to slightly influence their motion. These organisms release gametes into the water and fertilize each other, then releasing larvae which resemble smaller versions of themselves. Next up are the plumostomes, affectionately referred to as top hat animals by the fans of my series. This is because their silhouette resembles a top hat. Plumostomes are sessile, attached to the seafloor. They are extremely simple, essentially being a glob of flesh with an array of feathery appendages. These feathery appendages are filled with an analogue to blood. This is so they can absorb as much oxygen as possible, as well as absorb nutrients from marine snow. These appendages are also used to reproduce, with gametes being released into the water. These gametes would make contact with another type of gamete in the gonopore, then forming a spore, which is released into the water, attaching to the seafloor and beginning the growth cycle. Last, but certainly not least, these are the monoacanthostomes. They are unique among phyla as they have adapted an extremely abundant adaptation in motile clades, cephalization. This is the process of imperative organs being grown in proximity to each other and a single direction of motion being established. This encourages sensory organs to evolve. Monoacanthostomes have 6 compound eyes on the anterior side of their head, as well as chemosensors. There are also gills on their head which allows them to process oxygen quickly and efficiently, giving them enough energy for their lifestyle. They feed using a long proboscis which absorbs the nutrients from the marine snow. Monoacanthostomes also have a nerve ganglion nested in their head, allowing them to process stimuli very efficiently. Their nerves spread across their body, allowing them to sense the environment around them in a very acute manner. Here's a diagram of the neurosystem of a typical monoacanthostome. Monoacanthostomes have a series of muscles that allows them to move their body. Monoacanthostomes have evolved blood, which allows them to transport oxygen around their body very efficiently. To pump oxygen, they have evolved a long and thin hemocoel which allows them to pump blood all around their body. Some areas of their body are particularly vascularized, such as their gills and proboscis. The vascularization allows the former to absorb oxygen efficiently, and the vascularization of the latter allows them to absorb nutrients efficiently. Reproduction is handled by the abdominal tagma of the organism. During reproduction, two individuals of opposite gender would rub their abdomens against each other, with gametes being released from the wrinkles in the quote-unquote male's abdomen. And I'm saying male in quotes here as they are not males in the strictest sense. The male gametes would make contact with the female gametes, fertilizing them. This would form a zygote, hundreds of which are now present in the female's abdominal skin. These would develop for a short period of time, but when fully developed, a small, brown, seed-like object would fall to the seafloor and begin to grow into a polyp. The polyp would grow and branch and several bulbs. These bulbs would eventually hatch a larva, which would over time grow into an adult. Here is an image of the polyp as well as the larva. Many polyps grow, and because each polyp can hatch multiple young, these creatures are able to reproduce in huge quantities. This has made them extremely successful across Hemorrh. Here's a size chart of the two larger phyla on Hemorrh. The acanthiforms are too small to be seen on this size chart, so they get their own size chart. It should be on the screen now. We now have reached the end of the first episode. In the next episode, we will see how the descendants of these organisms will adapt to the development of predation.